Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zack, and for the last 7 days, I've been driving the 2024 Mazda MX-5 Grand Touring. Up front is a 2.0 liter inline 4, and down below is a 6-speed manual transmission. Now, I am super excited to be making this video because I've spent the last 7 days absolutely adoring this MX-5, and this starts the ND3, which is the second revision of the Mazda MX-5 ND chassis, and so we have a bunch of new things to talk about with that. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, MX-5 or not, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. So what's new for 2024? What has been updated? Well, the biggest talking point is the new steering rack. So they've actually updated the electric power steering with a new rack and a new software for that electric rack. I can't tell a difference. Honestly, having driven almost every model year of the ND, I don't really notice much of a difference. I'm sure on a racetrack with back-to-back comparisons, it would be much better. But honestly, day to day, if that's your one selling point, it doesn't feel much different. So it does get daytime running light headlights that are LED and new LED taillights, which I absolutely love. This is also finished in the brand new Aero Gray color, which is really, really sweet to see. They added the Zircon Sand last year, and now this year they added Aero Gray. The center console gets more padding. The instrument cluster has been updated for easier readability at a glance. Here's what it looked like in 2023, and here's what it looks like in 2024. 2023, 2024. Starting to feel like I'm reading a highlights magazine at a dentist office. Can't tell a difference, honestly. But the other big talking point is that it gets an 8.8-inch infotainment screen, which is new for this year. It's a little bit bigger. It does work as a touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. All of these are little tiny differences that do make the car a little bit better overall, but it still doesn't bring the MX-5 into the modern era. It still doesn't have rev match downshifting. It still doesn't have adaptive cruise, which some of its competitors do have, which we'll talk about towards the end of the video. But let's get back to that 2.0 liter inline 4 under the hood. Well, it's been the same engine since this car debuted in 2016. Now, they did give it a hefty power bump back in 2019, which is where it currently sits at 181 horsepower. I personally have always enjoyed this little 2 liter, and although it doesn't get an update for the ND3, I think it still makes a good amount of power. And people say all the time, oh, they should give it the 2.5 liter from the Mazda 3 and CX-30 and CX-5. And while I don't disagree, I think that would actually simplify Mazda's lineup quite a bit, because this is currently the only vehicle to get the 2 liter. I think it would lose some of its signature buzziness that makes the 2 liter so great. Like I said, paired to it is a 6-speed manual transmission. It is absolutely lovely, super notchy into gear, responds really, really well, nice and light clutch. However, you can find this in a 6-speed automatic if that's what you would prefer, but of course I prefer the manual. Last but not least about the drivetrain, the Grand Touring is rear-wheel drive. All Mazda MX-5s are rear-wheel drive. However, the Grand Touring does get a limited slip differential that can also be found on the Club edition of the MX-5. How does it feel to drive the Mazda MX-5? Well, I've driven every generation of the Miata and every single model year almost of the ND. I think I haven't driven a 2017 specifically, but I'd have to go back and check my notes. This car has become an extension of my body. When you're in this vehicle, you are one being moving through space and time. Every gear shift feels exactly how I want a gear shift to feel. The steering is very precise. This isn't a car. This is a conversation with a best friend. This is a companionship. And even in the rain, driving it in the rain, it's not a handful, which is absolutely awesome. That wasn't always the case. But even during the rainstorm, of which I filmed part of this video, look, it's doing fine. I was driving it perfectly normally, and I wasn't scared like I was when I owned my 1993 Miata a couple years ago. So definitely good to see that. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, that updated gauge cluster is right in front of me. Off to the left, I do have a digital gauge that you can swipe through a couple of different screens. Now, I do like this a lot. I think it works really well, and there is a multi-gauge screen that I usually leave it on, and it still has the push button where you can actually extend the the temperature to get a better reading of what it does. In the center, we have the tachometer. Absolutely love a good center mounted tachometer. I think every sports car should have that because that's what I worry about most. And off to the right, we do have a very optimistic 150 mile an hour speedometer. On the steering wheel, on the left, we have our volume settings, skip track, and info, which will change that digital gauge along with phone options. And off to the right, we have our cruise control options. Like I mentioned, non-adaptive, just run-of-the-mill cruise control. Off to the left, I do have a little climate control vent. And then I have several buttons that are kind of interesting. We do have our traction control off for race mode. So this will fully turn off your traction control, but you could also just turn it off kind of sort of with the button down below. We have our mute button for the sensors around the vehicle and our automatic high beams. Moving on to the door, we do get this nice panel, also finished in aero gray. I like that the NDs bring the exterior color inside. Makes it feel a little special to me. And down below, we have our power mirrors, power locks, and power windows. Moving into the center, we have that 8.8-inch brand new infotainment display with the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And here's what the backup camera looks like. I think the backup camera is pretty clear for the caliber of car that this is. However, I don't get any 360 cameras or any nonsense like that. And this does go out to a Bose sound system here in the Grand Touring Edition. Down below, we do have a climate control vent and hazard switch. And then we have our climate controls. Very basic here, no dual zone, temperature to the left, fan speed in the center, where to send it off to the right. This has been the same way since 1990 when they introduced the Miata. Then we do have heated seats, which is awesome, and a SD card slot for the navigation, and 2 USB-C ports. USB-C, a nice step into the future for Mazda. Then we have the lovely shifter in the center. Like I said, it clicks into gear. Clicks better than any mean girl ever could, and I absolutely love the throw. I love the look of it. This is a 10 out of 10 shifter. Down below, we have some options for that 8.8-inch screen. If we're not using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you run the regular infotainment system with this knob, and we have a button for music, home, navigation, and our volume. Off to the right, we do have a parking brake, and then we get the world's smallest center console that literally can only fit my medication. One single pill bottle. Off to the right, we can put in a cup holder if we'd like. So this actually has modular cup holders where you could either put it behind the driver's right arm, which is really uncomfortable to grab, but if you have a passenger, it's the way to go, or you can actually pull it out and place it where the passenger's left knee would be if you don't have a passenger and want to have your drink. Very, very smart packaging here from Mazda. And it should go without saying, but of course these little movable cup holders fail the big friggin' bottle test. Over my right shoulder, we also have a little lockable container, and there are 2 storage bins behind either seat. So you do have some storage in the interior, but you don't get a traditional glove box, and storage would not be a noun that I would use with the Miata. It's not a lot. The seats are decently comfortable. My 6'3" friend actually did sit in here, and his biggest issue was the legs. He had to move the steering wheel up a little bit to get around that, but you can fit in here if you're over 6 foot. I would highly recommend sitting in one prior to purchase if you can. And I do miss that I can't really recline. That's a big win with the GR86/BRZ, this car's direct competitor, is that you actually can recline because it does have very small back seats. Now, they're not usable really at all, but you can recline the front seats. These have no reclining. I mean, you can recline them about 1/4 of an inch, but 1/4 of an inch has never mattered to anyone. Also, as you'll notice, this is available with the tan interior, which I really like. It's new for 2024. However, the biggest advantage actually was that when you do leave it with the top down, it doesn't get as hot as the black interior. So if you like to leave the top down, I'd highly recommend the tan. Since we don't have back seats, however, let's hop into the trunk and do a quick trunk review. All right, around the back of the 2024 Mazda MX-5 Grand Touring, and we do have a button here on the key fob. Press and hold to open up the trunk. Once we do so, we do have the big friggin' bottle. Hey, look at that. Nice. But in the trunk, we don't have too much space. This is probably one of the smallest trunks in the segment, especially against the GR86/BRZ. However, it is deeper than you would think, and I fit a full case of water. I think it was 48 bottles of water and 48 bags of chips back here for the Zack lunch cruise, which I'll talk about later on. So it is decently usable, especially for like a weekend trip, going to work, getting groceries, it'll be fine, but just don't expect to put a couch in the back next time you move apartments. So some something to note, but that's the trunk space of the 2024 MX-5. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and like I said, this is finished in the brand new color of Aero Gray, and it also gets brand new wheels for 2024, which I strongly dislike. I think these wheels are what the kids call ugly, and they really remind me of the Mazda CX-50 wheels, which I like them on the CX-50, but then it looks like this has SUV wheels, and that just doesn't really look right to me. I don't hate them, but I think the pre-facelift ND wheels were really, really good, and so these are a little bit of a letdown. But overall, I of course love the proportions. I love the new LED headlights and taillights for the Miata, and overall, it's always been a good-looking car. However, one last thing I want to talk about with the exterior before we get on to the final thoughts is the fact that this is not the RF. The RF is the retractable fastback. This is the pure soft top. So in order to put it down, there's one latch in the center, you push it down, and then it clicks into place. To bring it back up, there's a little lever in the interior, it pops up, and you pull it the rest of the way. Super, super easy. If I can give you any consumer advice in this video, it would be that if you're buying an MX-5 as a secondary car, go with the soft top. If you're not going to drive it all the time, it's probably going to sit in a garage with the top down. Enjoy the soft top. It's really easy to use. It's not that noisy on the highway, and for a second car, it's perfect. If you are going to purchase an MX-5 as your only vehicle, as many people do, I always recommend the retractable fastback. It has less wind noise, especially on the highway, but just normal driving. It gives you better weather protection and a little bit more peace of mind that if you're out and about and parking it in a complex, that no one can just stab through your roof and get into your car. So if it's a daily, go hardtop. If it's a weekend car, I would go soft top. However, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think having driven the 2024 Mazda MX-5 Grand Touring for the last 7 days? Well, at the very beginning of this review, or beginning of the week when I got the car from Mazda, I was a little upset that it didn't have adaptive cruise and it didn't have auto rev matching, something that a lot of cars now have. But as I started to enjoy the car more and more and drive it more and more, I didn't want adaptive cruise. I didn't want auto rev matching. I didn't want all of these niceties. Now, the new screen is nice. The daytime running lights that are LED, they're very nice. But this is one of the last cars that really truly feels analog. Even though it has the electric power steering, even though it has onboard computers and voice commands and all that stuff, it still feels analog in the way that it drives. It truly feels like it's me and the Miata against the world. It doesn't feel like I'm driving a video game. When I'm sitting idling, the shifter actually vibrates a little bit. And when I put it into gear, I can feel the gears meshing. The pedal actually has varying resistance because it uses hydraulic pressure. It's not an electronic clutch. The steering is electronic, but you gotta get over it because it doesn't feel that way. I've driven other cars with electronic power steering that feel like you're trying to get a Starburst wrapper open with oven mitts on. That's not the case here. This is a tried and true sports car. And so, you buy a Ferrari if you want to look like you love driving. You buy an MX-5 because you actually love driving. And that's what this car is so gosh darn good at. It's so good to drive. I have been driving this all around the last week. You could barely peel me out of this thing. I even took it to the 2024 Sack Lunch Cruise, which I organized. Huge thank you to everyone that made it out to that event. You guys were absolutely wonderful, and the MX-5 was a perfect car for that day. It was bright and sunny. It was awesome. And so, as I wrap up my final thoughts, I've come to a conclusion. As I was driving home from seeing a very good friend, it hit me. It's not if I will buy one of these, it's only a matter of when. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Mazda for letting me take out their MX-5 for the last 7 days and 7 nights. I have been head over heels with this car. Huge thank you to everyone over there. Huge thank you to Drive Shop for facilitating the cleaning and delivery of this vehicle. And of course, the Midwestern Automotive Media Association. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.